national vision for just 1 minute to give the Pennsylvania constituents a little bit of a focus frame on what you're doing here in the state of Pennsylvania. So CGLA Infrastructure has actually ranked Pennsylvania's $253 million investment in weatherization as one of the top 100 infrastructure projects in the United States. Would you tell us a little bit about this and other projects that Pennsylvania has ranked priority for the state?
Well, interestingly, that $253 million comes from the stimulus, the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act. We have normally gotten about $35 million a year from the federal government, which we match with some state money to do weatherization. Weatherization means everything from energy efficient windows to energy efficient appliances, things that will allow homeowners to cut their energy costs and save money. The initial investment saves money within 3, 4, 5 years. This is a big challenge because all of a sudden we have 6, 7 times as much money and they want us to spend it in 12 months. But it's very, very important. It's devoted to small businesses and to residences, and it has to be successful. It's a very difficult challenge to ramp up that quickly. Most of our weatherization program is done through private nonprofit organizations, and we have a real capacity issue facing us whether they can ramp up that quickly. But we've put people on. The ARRA allows us to hire people administratively to administer the program from Harrisburg, and it's going to be an important component of the overall infrastructure spending in the stimulus. The biggest infrastructure spending in the stimulus, though, comes from transportation. Pennsylvania is getting over $1 billion in money to spend on road and bridge projects, and it's enormously needed in Pennsylvania. We lead the nation in structurally deficient bridges, and even though I've tripled the state funding from $200 million a year to $600 million a year in 6 years as governor that we spend on bridge replacement, we're still way behind. We went from 6,000 structurally deficient bridges to about 5,500. We have a plan with additional state spending, with the stimulus spending, to repair over the next, counting this current fiscal year, over the next 3 years, 1,000 of those 5,500 bridges, the worst, the ones that are in the worst condition, that are posing the biggest threat or that are key in economic development efforts. And the stimulus money is going to allow us to do that, complementing regular state money.
Okay, and is the Infrastructure Facilities Improvement Program, or IFIP, a part of this? It's a vital component, I know, of your $2.8 billion budget, but could you explain in greater detail how the IFIP program works?
Interestingly, the IFIP program is not traditional infrastructure that we would think of. It's not roads and bridges, it's not ports, but it's the infrastructure necessary for development, economic development. So you're a firm, and let's say you're going to produce those giant blades that are part of producing wind energy. Well, you're looking at different locations, and you need to be near rail because you want to rail those blades out. They're so big they would preempt the Pennsylvania Turnpike. So you need to be near rail. And you like this one industrial park, but they also don't have enough water infrastructure to meet your needs. So under IFIP, we can give that firm, they pledge the state income tax over a 10-year period, and we give them the equivalent. Let's say the state income tax that they'll generate is $500,000 a year. Well, that's over a 10-year period, $5 million. We will give them up front a $5 million that they can invest in buying a private activity bond. Probably for that could buy a $30 to $25 million bond. So they'll in fact use that to build out the infrastructure, to build the water and wastewater systems on their land, to do a spur that connects to the nearest rail short line. So it's been a very valuable program. Incidentally, it was part of our original economic stimulus program in 2003, but I didn't propose it. I proposed most of that program. The Republicans in the state Senate were responsible for that, and it's been a really successful program.
Fantastic. I think it's one of the keys to Pennsylvania being able to keep its unemployment rate
down. Yeah, we're a good point and a quarter lower than the national average, and it's been that way for the last 72 months. So we're proud of that. It's still much too high. Obviously, there's still a lot of suffering, but it's better to be where we are than where other people are.
Well, absolutely. And I guess back to the national vision for infrastructure, the idea of infrastructure, I think you've remarked, has not traditionally been a, quote, sexy subject, but with the ARA, I think infrastructure has in many ways become the new black. It's really on the tip of everyone's tongue.
I think President Obama deserves a lot of credit, but understand, and we give President Obama credit because he's the first president that's understood the whole overall long-term concept. But still, there's not enough money in the ARRA to even scratch the surface. I'll give you one example. President Obama wants to build a high-speed rail passenger system in this country. He wants to do for America in high-speed rail what President Eisenhower did for our federal highway system. There's, between the budget and the ARRA, there's $13 billion for high-speed rail. Now that's $13 billion that the federal government ever put on the table before. But to build a high-speed rail line from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh would be a $25 billion endeavor. So $13 billion is just scratching the surface. We've told the president that, and we've told him, and again, unless we do a capital budget where we take it offline from the operating budget, we're simply not going to be able to do it. Now, in a capital budget, you still pay for it, but the payments get stretched out over a term of 30, 40 years, so the impact on the day-to-day budget is less. And you know, there's this great debate going on in this country about, oh, is President Obama spending too much money and, you know, creating this big deficit for the future? Well, we have to understand that some people may call it spending. We call it investing. You have to invest in your assets, and infrastructure is one of this nation's crucial assets. If we don't invest in it, woe is us. We are going to become a second-rate economic power. So we've got to make that judgment. Not all spending is bad. If you look at businesses, how do you think businesses grow? They grow because at some seminal moment in their time, they make a significant capital investment in their own growth. They'll build a new factory. They'll add 3 new product lines. And there's always an element of risk involved in it, but the successful businesses, that's how they grow. I always like to say that Microsoft was one idea, 2 men, and $3,000. And obviously Microsoft reinvested in itself time after time after time to grow into one of the world's most preeminent businesses.
Absolutely. To touch on your point about capital investment, we at CGLA estimate that the National Infrastructure Bank would require something in the ballpark of $300 billion for the first term.
That would be minimum. That would be minimum.
And we agree with you that it's really a keystone, the National Infrastructure Bank, as a source of funding for infrastructure. And I think that that's one of your major points, I guess, one of the major goals that you're working towards. The infrastructure
bank. It's interesting, looking at the 3 of you here that represent CGLA, you're all relatively young, in your 20s or early 30s. And infrastructure, again, not sexy, but young people should be the most concerned about our infrastructure. Because if we're going to stay competitive down the road, and we're talking 15, 20, 25 years down the road, when you'll be at your peak earning power, we better do this and better do it now.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Thank you, guys.